Okay. My name is Chris Law. I'm work with PNISO, and with PNI being down in Chile, I'm pretty much coming in here and finishing off the training on this. I was did the one downstairs a couple of years ago, and I was PNI sort of works with me, so I was aware of what's going on with this whole thing anyway, even though I wasn't on site whenever it was being put in. So, all right, so what we've done here with the gear that you've had down there and the gear up here, even though it's in two separate places, effectively now it's acting as one piece of gear, okay? What we've done is taken the original gear, and that's on this side of the screen. This tie breaker right here used to be the generator 3 circuit breaker down there. We've converted that into a tie breaker, a normally closed tie breaker, and that's what connects the two gear, the gen bus here and the gen bus here together. So whenever anything starts, now this is going to act as one solid piece of gear. They talk back and forth with each other over Ethernet, so everything's aware of what's going on. So if you're familiar with our setup down there, as far as the physical components and everything else, we're using the same thing. Eaton DS circuit breakers, Magnum circuit breakers, with the same type of trip units and everything else on there. The same type of control platform that we have here. Pretty much everything else is the same. It might not be laid out the same, but everything else is the same. So what you're looking at here, the touch screen and the breakers and everything are controlled by the PLCs in the back. The PLCs, an example of one would be, what do we have up at the top right there? That's our 3S controller is what we're calling that. It's branded Caterpillar. It's actually made by Woodward, and that's actually looking at current voltage from the generator and doing all the voltage and speed control for the generator, in addition to doing generator circuit breaker operation too. So it does all that stuff within there, and at the same time is communicating by Ethernet to the other generators that's on the same network, right? Actually, to the other 4 generators. This one's known as the master right there. Generator 2, generator 3 each have their own. If for some reason this one goes down, then generator 2 becomes the master. If that one goes down, 3 becomes the master, okay? So it's just what we call a moving master. At the same time that we have a moving master set up, we have 2 different networks, 2 separate networks, an A network and a B network that they're all connected through. So if one network goes down, you've got the other one too. So with those right there, that's controlling all your generators, and they're actually controlling your distribution circuit breakers too, okay? That's pretty much what you have as far as controllers in here. The other thing that you see sitting in the bottom, that is the touchscreen processor right there. All that is a Windows box. It's just running Windows XP on it, and that's it. It's a pretty simple operation. Got a solid state hard drive in there, really no moving parts in there. It will get pretty dang hot though, so it's nice that it sort of stays a little cooler in here, but if you get on top of it, it is a little bit warm. That right there is purely to drive the touch screen itself. If that goes down, if the touch screen goes down, everything still works fine. Okay, you just don't have an interface with it. You can't look at anything. Although now that you have this one and that one down there, they're pretty much the same thing. So if this one goes down, you can always look at that screen down there for the same functions off of it. And like I said, processor there, touch screen here, And that's pretty much what you have as far as electronic components in there. About the only other things that you're going to see in here that you'd ever have to mess with, you have two switches sitting up here. Your first one is Instant Auto. Instant Auto is there that if you do lose your touchscreen or touchscreen processor and you do not know what condition that your system is in, if you've had something in off for a little bit, or if you've had this trouble or that trouble, if you take this switch, and this is a momentary switch right here, okay? If you take it to auto, and we just take it and hold it for a second and move it back, then that is an input into the controller that tells it to set every virtual switch that we have back to auto, okay? And whenever I say every virtual switch, I mean your generator switch is right there, your mode selector switch right there. Let's see. Your sync selector switches for your circuit breakers, okay? All those switches go back to auto. That way, if you take it back to auto, then you'll know that if you have a power failure, that your system will respond in the way that you expect it to respond, okay? So if any doubt about anything, move that switch. And if you're having a trouble, and if you call up, that's going to be one of the first things that we're going to ask, that you try to move your switch to auto.
Is that an override key right there? Does it require a key in there?
Yes, it does.
So you got to have a key in there before you can put it.
You got to have a key for load shed. You do not have to have a key for Instant Auto. Okay. Yeah, we don't want to yeah, because that puts your system in a safe situation. Okay, so we want to have that easily accessible. This puts your system in a potentially unsafe situation, so we want to have a key switch for that. All right. And we don't have any more switches in there because we don't have dueling processors. Our other two switches that we have up here, this is for Gen 1, or actually this is for Gen 3, what we're calling Gen 3. We have a speed switch right here, okay, and then we have a voltage switch right there. All right, so those are only in use whenever we are not controlling that circuit breaker. If for some reason you had to go to manual control on this, that's why we put that in there. They're very rarely used. I mean, some customers insist that they want to have manual control of the gens. Nobody really knows what to do with it whenever they have manual control. So, but that's what that's there for. This is purely, pretty much, counterclockwise slows down, clockwise speeds up, and then voltage is up and down. Okay, and you can go to your control screen right there and watch your voltage and your speed. Okay, so that's what we have on the inside of the gear right there. Does anybody have any questions on the inside there? No? Okay. I'm trying to see if there's anything. Nope, nothing really terribly important there. All right, so we'll keep that right there. All right, we'll cover our emergency stops that we have for the generators. Those are in line with the emergency stop that Yancey has for the gens out there too. Okay, so these are in the same circuit. So you hit it and it's going to, like I said, it's just like hitting the emergency stop out there. All right, so that that'll cover that. Whenever you do hit this one though, we will enunciate you have an emergency stop on here. Local e-stop. Okay, or actually that's e-stop. Local e-stop is out at the generator.
PLC, is it the programming run through a battery? Is there a battery we have to change or anything like that?
No, these do not have a battery. It is burned into the EEPROM in the PLC. So if it loses power, it will not lose its programming. That's a good question because a lot of the other ones do. You got to keep that thing. You got to keep 24 on it and then you got to change the battery or change it or whatever you need to do. But yeah, it'll look. But this one will not. It's burned into the chip. All right. So let's go real simple on the operation, because the operation is simple. You lose power, your generators will start up. First one to come to the correct speed and voltage will close the circuit breaker. The others, and this is up here, right? The others will sync to whichever one is closed onto the bus, okay? So they'll synchronize to that. Once you get one of them closed there, we're gonna try to close that tie right there to link all 5 of them together, okay? I did talk to Pina because there was an issue here about if you lost all 3 here, if you lost 2 there, that we had a dead bus issue where it didn't want to close onto a dead bus. And I'm sure that got taken care of, but I'm going to make sure about that. I wasn't involved in how the fix was, so I will find out that fix is there. But that's in that rare case that you lose all 3 of them on this side, or you lose 2 of them on that side. They'll take care of that. So once the gens come up to speed and synchronize to the bus, your ATSs will see that you have something on the bus, and we'll close in from there. Right now, I see that you've got these are open right here. So if these are open right here, you must have a conditional load shed on here, because you've only got one normally closed here. All the rest of them you have closed down there.
What that is, those are the closed ones are all the critical circuits. Goes to all our ATSs. The open ones are the not critical circuits, and they're timed in.
Okay, and those are going to like chiller pumps and stuff like that?
The chiller is going to all the circuits that were previously deemed normal circuits come in after. Critical circuits come up straight away without fail. The others come in sequentially.
Now, are these going to ATSs also?
No, those are going to switchboards.
Okay.
The normal switchboard out here. Switchboards up on the 3rd floor, switchboard, and picking up everything that wasn't previously picked up on the ATS.
Okay. So we can look at this right here will tell us how the circuit breakers are set up, like you're talking about. Their order that they're going to come in. And we'll go over this one more time. I don't know I'm sure that y'all going over this with Pina, but we'll go over this one more time. So if it's ESS, that's essential. That is a normally closed circuit breaker, always closed circuit breaker, will never be shed circuit breaker, okay? It's absolutely essential or critical, however you want to call it. That's the ones that you have closed in right now. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 correspond to the number of generators that you have on the bus, okay? So if you have 1 generator on the bus, then that circuit breaker will close, all right? So that is priority 1. So anything priority 1 will close as soon as that first generator hits the bus, okay? Likewise with priority 2. That second gen hits, that one closes in. And then we just step on down the line, 3, 4, and 5, okay? And then as soon as, and after all those close.
5 never cranks.
Do what?
Say you had a problem with 5. Does that breaker close in?
No, the breaker will not close because you do not have load sense on. Okay.
And can you go in and manually transfer it?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It will not hold that breaker open. It just will not try to close that breaker. Okay. So.
How can I change that?
How can you change which thing?
The the numbers are there.
How can you change it? Just double tap this right here, okay? And once you double tap that window, then you can change it however you want to. Anything 5 or anything above 5 is going to be called non-essential. In which case, non-essential means that we will not try to close that breaker at all. We will open that breaker, but we will not try to close that breaker. Not really used in a system like y'all have here, okay? But, so you can change that from 5 to 2 to whatever, and then hit download, and you're good to go, okay? You can also go to where this switch is right here that's pointed straight up into auto. You can take it to add, or you can take it to shed, and it will either manually close that breaker or manually open that breaker, or actually remotely close or remotely open that breaker. And you can keep it there. And if you keep it there, then we will not try to do anything else to that breaker after that, okay? If you put number 5 in shed, we will not try to close that breaker even though you have that number 5. That's just, usually we do that to, if you need to have better control of something. If you need to say, okay, never mind, I'm trying to do some maintenance work or something like that, and I want that breaker always in shed. I don't want it to try to close in or something. But most people just leave that part alone, the shed and add part of it. Leave it in auto, and it will go through and do what it needs to do. Like I said, if you need to change something, you can go up here. You can see the ESS, okay, is always 0, all right? So if I put it in 0, then it's going to be essential all the time. That's priority 0 is always essential. And if you put it in 0, it's going to show up ESS during that time. Any questions on this right here?
Well, were those numbers predetermined or?
No, y'all.
So that's something we might need to change?
Yes. Yep. So y'all can change that at any time too. That no password is required for y'all to change this. All right. So now just to go back over that, so you lose power, gens start up, gens come to the bus, breakers close in as the gens come to the bus. Okay, and then once breakers closed in, obviously the ATSs out there are going to swap over, right? And then everything runs until power comes back. Whenever power comes back, then there's the ATSs will let us know after they swapped back over, right? And once all the ATSs have moved back over to normal, then we'll start counting down, okay? Go to system control here. We'll have a timer that comes up that says, like it's not a retransfer timer because you're not doing anything, but as soon as the last ATSs have moved over, it'll run for another, I'm not too sure what he's got it programmed for, but another 5 minutes, you know, and then you're good to go that way, okay? And then once the gen breakers pop open, once your gen breaker's open, then you're going to start opening these other breakers right here too, all right? So that's pretty much how the operation is supposed to take place. Does that pretty much follow what y'all have seen before? Okay. What's available here is we can look at, you go to the main menu and pretty much find everything that you need on the main menu, or you have different touch areas on the screen to navigate pretty much to the same thing, okay? The only thing that I don't really like about this is what I just showed you with the load shed, you can't get to from the main menu, okay? I'll start out here. This is the overview that we're always sitting at. The load shed is always, you got to go to control and system, and then you'll see load shed control down there. Load shed control is load shed level 5. All this right here really has nothing to do with you at all, okay? That has everything to do with those relays that are right there. Usually in other places, they'll hook their ATSs into those relays right there. Okay, so whenever level 1, level 2, level 3, if it's a smaller hospital or something where they're not using distribution breakers that much, they'll hook their ATSs right into there and use that to load shed their ATSs. So that's what this is for right there, is control those relays. But you're going to go to load shed control there, and there's your circuit breakers. Okay. So, like I said, we can go to main menu, or you can go there to look at different parts of it. There's no part on this that one touch is going to cause a problem. Okay, with the exception of if you go to off on your gens. Okay, then that's going to let you go to off, but you're really having to try for that one. If you want like master shutdown right here, okay, this master shutdown, and watch. I hit master shutdown, there's going to be a confirmation screen that's going to pop up to say, are you sure about this? Okay, because it's going to cause a power outage. Master shutdown is just an electronic e-stop for all the gens. Okay, it doesn't shut down any of the controllers or anything else. It's just a master, it turns all the gens off. And I don't know, if you've got a massive blowout out there or something like that, you might want to use it. You can just hit cancel and you get out of there. Okay.
3, 4, 5 start.
Any other things you might have? Going to manual, it's not going to ask you about going to manual. If you do go to manual, then you're not going to get your automatic operation that you want to have. Okay. If you go to manual there, and you'll get that. Okay, to let you know you've got a problem, because when you're in manual and you lose power, your gens are not going to start up. Okay, your breakers are not going to close. No automatic action is going to happen. All right, so we'll go back to auto, and we're happy that way. All right, generator no load test. Gens will fire up or start up and come to the bus. Close the breakers, come to the bus, and sit there for as long as you have that switch right there in on. There is no exercise time or anything else. It's going to sit there until you turn them off again. And whenever you take them off, then they're going to go into cool down for 5 minutes after that.
Test
So-
with load is how long is that?
Test with load is the same thing. Test with load, though, is going to initiate any ATSs that you have set for test with load. Okay, so if we go and look at ATS control bus, whatever, right? We look at that, and that's going to do your test with load.
What's that number 2 on that?
It's 2 generators.
I'm sorry.
That's when the second generator comes online. The number 2 he's talking about over there.
That is saying, yeah, that ATS is not going to swap until you get the second generator on. Yep. And
That's part of the stuff. That's part of the, sorry to interrupt. That's part of the stuff that Mike can go in there and change. He can change them all at once if he wants to, right?
yes, yeah. So there's your overview. Okay, there we go. There's your control right there. All right, so, but yeah, so if you go test with load, that's going to send a signal to that ATS that it's to send a signal back to us, right? To say, okay, you know, it's going to give us a gen run signal, and whenever it does, then we're going to start the gens, and once we start the gens, it's going to flop over. So you're going to have that brief interruption of power whenever it flops over to go to the emergency on that one. And of course, the bypass retransfer is just like the bypass retransfer on the ATSs. It starts timing out. You don't want to listen to it time out or wait for it time out. You hit that. All right. So this shows all your ATSs there. I don't know if we just not getting any indication on those right there?
No
Okay.
control.
And there you go. You can hit your touch screen and pull this up.
Test with load at the original screen. Can you go back there?
Yeah.
That's gonna do all the ATS.
That I don't know here. I'll find out, but I don't know that here. I don't think it does. I don't think it sends a
You gotta
test
go
with load
each
to everything.
ATS individually?
I think so.
Is that what
That
you're doing, Ken?
Yep.
that's usually how I prefer to have it set up, where you pick your ATSs that you want to have transferred, instead of just hitting one thing and have ATSs that you don't want to have. You know, you don't want to interrupt power for something. So I will find that out. I don't know here, but I will find that out for you. What this test with load here does. All right, so what to look at there? Our ATSs. Any more questions on the ATSs? Need to go back to the screen or anything and look? We're good? Okay. Let's look at the enunciator on this then. With the enunciator, we have everything from system to the enunciator for your tie right here, or for your generators. All right, so let's do generators first, because pretty much one generator is the same as all the rest of them. Okay, 480 volt generators. So you got pre-alarms right here. They just alarm. Nope, just to let you know you've got a little problem. Okay, but it's not stopping the gen from starting up, and it's not shutting it down. Okay, these include any things that have to do with the engine, like oil pressure, coolant temp, stuff like that. Also battery voltage. Whenever we're talking battery voltage, that's the starter battery, the 24 volt starter battery. The reason we really care about that is because the starter batteries also supply us with backup 24 volt power. Okay, not only do we have station batteries here, but we're also using every starter battery that they have out there, bringing them in here, going through diodes, so that we have like 4 different, well actually we have 6 different sources of 24 volt power for this thing. All right, battery charger fail, that's a common alarm. We've seen it on here. That just says that most of the time is that you've turned off the power. If you lose all your battery chargers at one time, if you got that fail, it's just a common alarm. If you lose AC, DC, have any sort of problem like that, that battery charger fail is going to come up. Engine comms, we're talking to the engine out there for certain things. If we lose that, we'll let you know. Fail to sync if we don't sync in a certain time. Fuel level, sync. This sync not an auto is your control switch for your circuit breaker. Okay. ECS not an auto is your engine control switch here. Okay. Anything other than that, it's going to come up and say not an auto. All right. Control auto. All right, so we're back. Okay.
It didn't alarm till it's back. Going back to auto, it didn't alarm again.
It will not alarm again whenever it goes back. Okay, it only alarms whenever you take it, whenever you take it out of auto. Okay. Ground fault tripped is off these right here. Rupture basin means you got your fuel tanks have a wall in between the tank and the interstitial wall. If it's sensing fuel or something in that area right there, that's where your rupture basin comes. It says you got a leak in your fuel tank. High fuel level, circuit breaker failed to close, failed to open, the remove denied if you're trying to take a gen off, okay, because you have gen demand on, that says that, you're running 5 gens, you don't need 5 gens, it's trying to take a gen off. If for some reason we say, no, we're not going to take that gen off because you either have too much load or something that it senses is not right, and it's going to say remove denied. That's what that remove is gin demand, okay? And then pull to lock right here is that right there, okay? And all that is that'll keep that breaker from shutting manually, or I'm sorry, automatically, okay? So don't think of it as a safety function. If you got to worry about safety, rack out the breaker, okay? And to get it back, just hit it and it'll spring back into position right there. Okay, pre-alarm shutdowns, over and under frequency, over and under voltage. This is us doing this, not the EMCP out there that has that. They have their own under and over for these things. Reverse power, same, and loss of field, overexcitation. All this right here is us, okay, that's doing that. So if you lose it that way, we shut it down for our reasons. Loss of crank terminate. Now it's starting to come from out there, okay? Crank terminate means that you've stopped cranking the gin. What it should say is gin running. That's what crank terminate is, gin running. If you lose that signal, then we've lost the signal that says the gin is running. We don't know what's going on, okay? So we'll shut down the gin if we don't realize the gin's running or not. EMCP summary shutdown, if that shuts down for any reason, whatever reason, that's a hardwired alarm right there. That'll come in and say, look, you've had the EMCP shut down the generator. We don't know why, or we might know why. It might be one of these, but that's just letting you know that it's shut down out there and not inside here, okay? It might have been low coolant level, high coolant temp, like all this stuff right here, that's all at the gin, okay? And so if that happened, then that will enunciate and these will enunciate. But if you have any other problems like that, like maybe, I don't know, high oil pressure or something like that that's shut down, you know, then you're gonna have to look at it out there. So shutdown, alarm. As far as if you do have a shutdown, for the engine to reset the shutdown, you want to take it to off. Okay, once you take care of whatever shut that gin down, take it to off, then take it back to auto. Normally this says, and I don't know why they stopped doing that, normally it says off/reset, okay, and that's what it does. So even if it shuts down out there, you got to go off reset out there, and then you got to come in here and go off reset. Pretty much anytime the gin shuts down, you just count on doing off reset at our place. Whether they shut it down, we shut it down, whatever, off reset. That'll take care of it. And that's pretty much the enunciate. This is just status up here. Engine ECS is at the engine itself, okay? Let's see. Let's go back to enunciator for the system. These are gins that are available. If your gin is in off or your gin is shut down out there or whatever, your gin is not going to be available, okay? So, and then there's your priority if you had gin demand going, all right? Master mode switches in auto. Whenever I moved it to manual, that has showed up as red and it said manual, okay? There's your load test switch, your no load test switch. All these right here are just statuses of what you got going on there. Big alarms, E mode. E mode means that the gins are running on the bus, okay, and not in no load test, okay? That they've got a run signal from an ATS is what that means. System not an auto, the only way you can get that, actually you can get that by having your circuit breakers not an auto too. Master shutdown, that's that right there. Let's see, bus under frequency. If for whatever reason the generator bus, whenever they're on, If they fall down to less than, I believe it's 58 hertz, then you'll get a bus under frequency. It's going to open up every one of your distribution breakers if that ever happens. Let's look at that right quick. Control, load shed control, under frequency trip, okay? Set for 55 hertz. And
Who determined that?
that is determined by, hold on just a minute here. It's up here. Generator trend. It's up here someplace. I got to figure it out because it's on my.
Is that adjustable or is that from the factory?
I believe that's adjustable. There we go, right here, under frequency trip. Okay. These right here, these settings that you see up here, any settings that you have to come up with, you just enter your password and do your settings. Your password right now, 1234. Okay, and now you can go to gen demand and load shed settings. You can go here to under frequency trip and do your same, double click it and have it come up, and you can set what you need to. So it's 55 hertz at 3 seconds. If your gens drop to 55 hertz, and that's all your gens, right? So if something, like you got a big load or something like that that's dragging those things down, maybe you only had 2 gens come up and everything's hitting and it's dragging those things down to 55 hertz for 3 seconds, and it's going to open up every distribution breaker you have, every breaker that's going out there. And because it's trying to unload those gens, okay, so they don't shut off. And then you're going to have to show up and reset that. And that is transmitter system.
Is it shutting out breakers at random, or is it doing it like a reverse order?
It opens all of them up.
So everything comes up, even
Yep.
the essentials.
Yep, everything comes up. And then you got to come back and reset that thing. Hit circuit breaker fail, reset. Actually, the best thing to do about that, if you got a problem like that, is hit this right here. Okay, because that takes care of all alarms. Takes care of your circuit breaker fail, takes care of anything. It's like, I don't know where it is on the screen, because you don't mess with the screens that much. Hit that, and that'll take care of anything, okay? So that's your bus under frequency. Circuit breaker fail, talked about the same thing too. Your battery chargers, if you've had a distribution circuit breaker fail to open, fail to close, that'll show up there. If any of them trip, ground fault, I'm not too sure what an SPD alarm is. Do y'all know? It looks like something that's local here.
Stir processing, but you know what the alarm means.
That's SBS.
SBS now, okay.
They got their own little window.
Sounds like they do.
They have a known node and unknown node. If you're missing a node, if it's looking for a particular node out there, and a node is a controller, okay? If it's looking for one, and the controllers will be like Gen 1 and 2 down there, it's going to be node 1, node 2. Gen 3 is going to be node 3, node 4, node 5, okay? And then if you've got some data concentrators, some data PLCs and stuff, those are going to be some nodes out there also. If it shows up, it's having a little communications glitch on that. That's the only thing that happens there. Okay, so that's your annunciator right there. Anytime this thing blinks, you've got a problem, okay? You'll see it blinking, you pull it up, whichever one is blinking, that's where your problem is, okay? You navigate to there, you look at it, you get alarm acknowledge, right? I have to hold it for just a little bit, and then whatever problem you had will go solid instead of be blinking then, and then you can see what's going on, all right?
Much like this morning when I hit the silence alarm, my annunciator kept flashing. Once that power was reestablished, that cleared that trouble by itself. Or
If it's an alarm, okay. If it's a shutdown, then you're going to have to
Reset it.
just you have to reset it, right?
Like this morning, but it probably wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, it was this right here,
Right.
right? So, and it will go away. It will reset
Once it
itself.
calls the power back, it reset itself.
Right. But if it's a shutdown, you're going to have to go and go to off reset right there. Okay? So, yeah, if it's an alarm, you're fine. You're good to go. But if it's shut down, you've got to initiate that. And just go hit your acknowledge alarm. That'll lock it in, and then go back and hit your off reset, and that'll take care of it. Okay? And then you got an alarm summary button over here too that you can go to, and that's filtered everything. Okay, that's looking just at generator 4. Okay, so you don't have to sort through everything to see. Okay, so that's our enunciators right there. Take a look at our gens right quick. Okay, this is from communications. We talked about the engine comms that we get. This is all engine comms that we're getting over Modbus from the generator itself. Battery voltage and your main stuff right here. This is your local EMCP out there, okay? And that's, you can't change it, okay? That's just what it's getting. Engine hours, engine starts, and then you can go over here, hit air cool, shows you a little bit more detail, the expanded data that it's looking at. And over here is for your oil and fuel to show you a little bit more, okay? It's just a sort of a nice thing to look at. We really don't base any alarms or control or anything else off this right here, okay? This is just engine monitoring, all right? Even oil pressure stays low, or water jacket, if that gets too high.
Low water jacket heater.
That'll alarm out there and then send it into here, right? And you'll have a pre-alarm, low coolant temp right there. Okay, you'll have that, but it's just a pre-alarm. It's nothing that's going to keep you from running, right? Here's your alarm, and you can have an alarm reset there too, right? To knock that off. With 3S, it's a little bit different. Okay, and then that says engine monitor, that's control. Anything else in the main menu to look at here? I think that's about it. Settings, trends, monitor. See the enunciator menu there. Reports. One of the things I like to look at on the reports right here, this will show you all your system settings. I'm not too sure why we have a report for two things right here, right? But my reports that I usually do is plant test, okay? That's when everything's started up and running. This will tell you all 5 gens, and the load on all 5 gens, and how the load looks on all 5 gens. KW, KVAR, even some of the engine stuff on there too. So if you need to look at everything at one time, sort of a good thing to do to if you're trying to log something down, you can see it. And then the other reports that we really have out here is just generator settings and the tuning report. And y'all don't really care about the tuning report. Once we tune the gens, they just sort of stay the same the whole time. The gen settings, you can see where that's how everything's set up for your gens. This is our shutdowns for them, okay? Under and over frequency, under and over voltage, reverse power, under and over excitation, things like that. Let's see. The tie control, that's just your tie that closes in to marry this gear to the gear downstairs. And then your ATS is what we looked at there too. All these ATSs here, and then individually there, how it's set up. And your ATSs, I don't know where your Hoffman box is for those things, but it has its own control box that has another PLC, or actually what we call a remote I/O, that controls all your ATSs and is receiving information from your ATSs. Any questions on this?
The old generator gen sets we had in here, if we didn't have enough load, one of them would shut down, and we'd run it in manual. Does that do the same thing here?
You do, but it's turned off at this point. That is this gen demand right here.
Yeah, we went through that when we ran the facility. And when it was shutting engines down, it was opening breakers, bouncing the facility back and forth. Rather than save fuel, I'd rather burn the fuel and that back.
Yeah. What would happen is, and it would, it's not something that you normally see in hospitals, is that the option's always out there, but the hospitals very rarely use it because they very rarely run just on, for a while
like
with
you said, our old gear did.
You're right.
It was shed one every single time. But we weren't covering the demand load we've got here either. We were just doing critical care, basically our emergency power.
And what would happen here is because, and it would start shutting them down, based upon this chart right here, depending on how much load that you had, so if you're looking out here and if you had, say, let's call it 4,000 kW of load that your generators had right there, that anything, if it's anything in green that's above 4,000, it's going to shed those. So it would shed, of course, priority 5. Well, as soon as it shed your priority 5 gen, the first thing that happened is that any circuit breakers that are priority 5 would open, okay? But then they would close back in after a certain amount of time, because the only way to get that to work is you have to have your load sense, okay? And it actually should say load sensitive. Your load sensitive, that has to be on before your gen demand can be on, okay? But, dang it. System control, gen demand, okay. So, but yeah, it'll pop open if you have a priority 5 breakers, and then it'll close them in after it looks at load and say, oh no, we got plenty of load.
But if it goes away in there and does away with all the priority 5s, and makes them all 1s and 2s, is it going to go down to 2s right shutting that one?
It'll go down to 4. Yeah.
It's the next number.
Yeah. And I'm not a big fan of the way that operation's set up. I don't like that. If you're going to have gen demand, why are we popping open breakers? I'm not a fan of that, but that's how the system is set up for
Seems
that.
like it ought to be one or the other, not both.
Right. If you're going to do gen demand, you don't want to be popping open breakers whenever you're opening that up, okay? And I got to look at it. I think the other way to do gen demand without doing that is to have your load shed and off on that, okay? All your load, all that there is 4.
Yeah, we did something, there was a reason we left it in auto. We left it in auto in the event of, leave all the engines running all the time. And in the event of, if an engine actually failed, in the event of an emergency, like we're overloading,
Right.
start dropping.
Yeah.
So
If an
leave
event,
only the essentials.
right. Then it would, yes,
If we
exactly.
lost an engine, we'd still maintain, we have 5 engines, if we had 4 engines, we could pretty much run the whole facility. If we lost 1 engine, we'd be fine, everything would stay on. If we lost 2 engines, we'd start dropping something. Children, I forget how to say it.
But
So on and so forth.
if you know that you're going to be running for a long time, that Georgia Power blew up a substation or something like that, if you knew that would happen, then you could go to load shed and then move that 5 to a 3 or something like that, you know, or you just shut off a gen. You know, that's what I would do.
I
You know.
thought about that, and if we came into a situation like that, we would move everything down and drop a generator and kind of rotate them in,
Yeah.
save 20% of the fuel.
Yeah, and that's what I would do. Is that if it's like, okay, we're going to be on for 2 days, you know, so bring this down to 4, you know, bring your 5s to 4 and take 1 gen off the bus, you know, and just and rotate like you're talking about, you know, because if that happens, you're going to have people here on their toes the whole time anyway. That you're on gens, so that's the way I would run it. And normally hospitals, they don't worry about gen demand because they're not on generators a long time, whereas data centers will go to generators whenever they have to do maintenance bypass on UPSs or something like that, and they can afford, but they're not dealing with 5 levels of load shed anyway. You know, most of their stuff is always critical. So just a different way of operation on that. Any more questions? I said main menu, system settings. I'm trying to think of anything else we might look at here. And I think I got JCO is actually the procedure for the JCO reports are in the book there too, to get that report off and everything else. And let's see.
When it says JCO report, Mike, is it saying JCO's terminology? You get that?
JAGO's requirements for testing is what
I
that.
mean, but it fills in the blanks. It's got all the.
I don't know, I have to look at it.
Yeah, I'd have to look
I
at.
prefer not to use it only because I think it provides more
More than
information
it
than
needs.
I want to give.
Yeah,
I want to give it the minimum
that's
to what it takes.
that's not the first time I've heard that.
Which, you know, it's nice, it's a nice feature to have, but that might not be what gets submitted to a committee.
Right. I mean, what they need, like load and exhaust temps and stuff like that off of there? Okay. All right, so like I said, anything on here, you can play with whatever screens you want to on here, especially, you know, if it's running or something like that. If it's running, I'll watch the engine trend a lot of times and make sure that things look balanced out, things like that, you know. If it's going to cause a shutdown, you're not going to cause a shutdown going between screens. All right, so you're fine there. And I would actually take a little bit of time to familiarize yourself with what you have as far as these screens and everything else go. And then if you're running any questions, call Yancey.
Oh, yes.